Right, well, I think we'll start because I'm conscious we've got the WIN meeting following pretty hard on after this. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's well, most importantly, and welcome to this year's Westmill Solar Annual General Meeting. Obviously, because of the coronavirus, we've had to put this meeting online, but we're delighted with the record number of members who've registered to attend, and we'll do everything we can to make things as informative and entertaining as our previous face-to-face AGMs. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those new members who joined us through last year's bond offer. I hope you feel inspired by what you hear today to get even more involved with Westmill Solar. And the same goes for other members who've not previously been able to attend an AGM, especially those living further away from the site. We appreciate that holding the AGM online is much easier for you, and we very much hope to be able to include this kind of opportunity in future meetings. I believe we have a number of members attending who are joining us from well, far away, if not overseas. So can I invite you to let us know through the chat function where in the world you're joining us from, and we'll try to give a shout out to some of the farthest flung among you later in the meeting. Before I introduce the panelists and what we're planning to cover this morning, I'd like to run quickly through the meeting protocol. The Zoom tutorials, which Sam ran earlier in the week, went pretty smoothly, so hopefully it's all intuitive. But we have the WIN AGM, as I said, following hard on this meeting, and I know that many of you are WIN members, so we need to make sure we keep things running pretty efficiently and on time. Firstly, you'll notice that because there's so many attending, I think Sam said we've got 170, we're having to use the Zoom conference option, which means that the default position is that we can't see or hear you, and indeed you can't see or hear each other. So while you can hopefully see all the panelists and check out our bookshelves and what our spare rooms look like, the secret of what you're wearing or having for breakfast is generally safe. Although be warned that if you do want to ask a question personally, verbally, then we will need to turn on your audio and video. Secondly, the meeting's being recorded and we'll make it available online afterwards for anyone who wants to listen to it, especially those who couldn't attend. We're also planning to keep a record of the chat function so we don't lose any nuggets of information there. The question and answer function, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, and we'd encourage everyone who has a question to type it in as and when it pops into your head, so that we can group and prioritize questions and get them asked at the appropriate moment. I think we appreciate that given how many people are in the meeting, we may not have time to answer everyone's questions, which was partly why we asked for questions to be circulated in advance. But any questions that we don't get time to answer today, we will answer after the meeting, and we will post the answers to members and on the website as we did with the questions we received before the meeting. To save time, we've slightly changed the process for proposing and seconding resolutions this year. As chair, I'm proposing each resolution, but we'd still like a member to second the resolutions. So if you'd like to do so, there's a raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, and this is a bit of a finger on the button moment. So in general, the first person to raise their hand will be chosen as the seconder. I think Nina is also planning to use the function during her presentation just to get some instant feedback on the community funding programme, but I'll leave that to Nina. In terms of voting, we've had over 225 people registered to attend this morning's meeting. As I say, about 175 are with us. Most have already voted online, so thank you for that. And in total, we've received advance votes from 311 members. As chair, I've also been appointed proxy for a further 162 members. So I think there's about 70 of you who joined in the meeting who haven't voted. So we're getting on over 500, nearly 600 people who voted, which is a really fabulous level of response. And thanks to everyone who's participated in that. When it comes to a vote, a poll is going to appear on your screen. So Sam, I think we've got a test vote. If you could pop that up for people now. When you get to the actual votes, there will be an option at the bottom to indicate that you've already voted in advance. So feel free to hit that option so we know we've got an idea of how many numbers and making sure that everybody's voted. And that should also avoid any confusion on double counting. Please feel free to vote now on this test resolution. Our aim is to complete each vote within about 10 to 15 seconds, but I'll try to make sure I give a warning before the voting closes. The results of this vote, or indeed of any of the votes, will be shown pretty much immediately. So Sam, I don't know if we've got an answer to this figure. That's a great response. But those figures obviously won't include the people who voted in advance or the proxy votes. So I'll confirm the count for each resolution before declaring the result. And if it looks like the voting is a bit closer than on that test resolution, we may need to verify the final figures after the meeting. I've already mentioned the chat function, and please use that to give us feedback while we're presenting. If you particularly like something that someone says, or it triggers an idea in your head that you'd like to share, please let us know via the chat. I can see that people are already using it, so that's great. Keep it coming. The only other thing I'd like to mention on the subject of protocol is what happens if the technical gremlins strike. If your own personal internet goes down, then you should be able to rejoin the meeting using the link that you've used already this morning. If my connection goes down, then I've asked my board colleague, Mark Luntley, to stand in for me as chair, so hopefully everything will run even more smoothly. And if everyone's connection goes down, please try to link back in. We'll try to get everything up and running as soon as we can, but if we're unable to do so, we may have to adjourn the meeting. And if that happens, we'll obviously notify everybody after the meeting by email of the rescheduled time. I hope all that is clear. I don't know, Alistair, if you had any questions on that.
No, we've had a question, but it's not regarding that. That
okay.
Question will be answered a bit later.
Thank you. We'll save that till later on. Jonathan, thank you. Please need to select all panelists and attendees for their comments to be visible by everyone. So that's great. So the agenda for this morning's meeting is set out on this slide. You'll be hearing from each of the directors at some point, but just to introduce you to them now, you should be able to see each of Martin, Bob, Mark, Nina and Mari. Also on the panel is, at the moment, I think just one of our prospective new directors, Angela, but we were anticipating Andy Crawford would also be joining us. From FX, we have Belinda, who is the interim chief operating officer and covering for Sarah Flood while she's on maternity leave as the secretary of Westmill Solar. Alistair, who does most of the day-to-day administration to keep everything working, and will be dealing with the questions and answers. And Sam, who is our newsletter guru, and you'll speak to with any member inquiries at the FX office, and he's the person who's really in charge today. Last but certainly not least, we've got Paul from Energy for All, and as many of you will know, Energy for All do for Westmill Wind what FX do for Westmill Solar, and they've taken the lead in getting everything sorted for today's meetings. We've basically divided today's agenda into two parts. The first part is the formal legal business of the AGM, and we've allowed time within Martin and Bob's presentations to take questions on the solar park performance and the accounts and the auditors. We'll try to link any other questions we get with the relevant resolutions or deal with them at the appropriate time during the meeting. The second part of the meeting comprises the presentations from Mark, Nina and Mari. This is really a taster for you all about some of the other work that we're already doing, both on community funding and how your board's planning to take Westmill Solar forward. We're very, very keen to get feedback from all members on all of this over the coming months, but we appreciate we simply don't have time to do that today online. So we will be emailing you with more information over the summer as things develop. And we're hoping to draw everything together, as we said in our invitation letter, at another meeting sometime this autumn. Obviously, the timing and format of that will depend on coronavirus as much as everything else, but we look forward to seeing you all again then. And in the meantime, we hope that what you hear this morning will whet your appetite for what's to come. So without further ado, I'd like to turn to Resolution 1, which is the approval of last year's AGM minutes. I'm proposing to take these as read, so unless anybody's got any questions or comments, I propose that the minutes of the 2019 AGM that were circulated with the notice of this meeting approved. As I said, could I ask for someone to second this motion through the raise hand icon on your screen?
We had Stephen Craig come in first on that.
Thank you, Stephen. So could I ask you to vote? Okay, I'm going to close voting. 3, 2, 1, closed. And Sam, if you could show the results of that. That's great. So as well as the votes cast on that poll function that you see, we had a total of 404 votes cast in favour of the resolution, either in advance or by proxy, 4 against and 65 abstentions. So on that basis, I declare the resolution passed, and thank you very much, everybody. So into the meat of the meeting, and as I say, a description of last year, and I'll hand over to Martin now for a review of how the solar park performed in 2019. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so yeah, my name is Martin Allman. I take a lead on the technical well-being of the site, which includes the interface with our O&M contractors and with our asset manager. I've been a board member since June 2015. So you can see on the first slide. Well, I'll tell you, I'm in the fortunate position again of being able to confirm that the performance and generation of the park remains very strong. And whilst we didn't quite reach the sunny heights of 2018, 2019 proved to be another bumper year with generation, which was reaching an impressive 5,271 megawatt hours of electricity. The graph that you can see shows the month-on-month generation figures for 2019 in blue. The yellow is the average monthly generation over the previous 6 years from 2013 to 2018. And what we see is that the 2019 monthly generation was higher than the average for the previous 6 years for 8 of the 12 months over the course of the year. Next slide, please, Sam. The second graph compares annual generation of 2019, which is in light blue, the light blue block. And we can see when we compare that to 2018 in dark blue, the generation was 1.5% lower than the 5,350 megawatt hours generated in 2018, which was a very, very good year. So down on 2018, but still close to our record year in 2014, shown here in green, when annual generation reached 5,393 megawatt hours. And finally, the yellow bar, which shows the average over the previous 6 years between 2013 and 2018. And the figures show that the 2019 was 2.7% higher than the 5,134 megawatt hour average annual generation over this 6-year period. So the message is that the solar park is consistently performing well, month on month and year on year. And as the point was made in the paperwork that came out before the AGM, the generation is substantially ahead of the forecasts at the time of the 2012 share offer and above the average generation figures over previous years. The next slide, please, Sam. So what does all this wonderful electricity generation mean? Well, aside from the financial returns, which Bob will dig into shortly, and the greater community benefits that we're able to offer, in 2019, Westmill Solar generated the equivalent consumption of over 1,800 UK households, avoiding some 1,336 tonnes of CO2 emissions. So in effect, each of you as members has effectively offset all of your carbon emissions from their electricity usage. So well done you, well done us. British Solar Renewables, which is our operations and maintenance contractor, they continue to perform well and very much give us good value from what we see across the market. You may recall that we signed a 3-year contract with BSR in 2017, and we'll be reviewing whether we wish to extend that contract with them later this year. One indicator of their performance is when we look at the availability of the site, and the solar park achieved our 99% availability target in every month of 2019, except for February and October. And since the start of our contract with BSR in December 2017, we've achieved availability of 99.59%. So pretty good. So our priorities for this year, for 2020. Firstly, in confirming our contractual partner for the asset management of the site. This currently sits with RENA. We're also looking at the health and safety and the security of the site as ongoing measures to make sure that we have best practice in place. We're also looking at new ways that we can be proactive in identifying performance issues, which we can then seek to address and improve. For example, we're currently scheduling a thermographic drone survey of the park to identify possible degradation in the panels. The final point for me, you might be unsurprised to hear that last month the solar park achieved the best ever monthly generation figures with 871,492 kilowatt hours recorded between the 1st and the 31st of May. The previous best monthly performance was way back in July 2013. So much more to come. But in summary from me, another really good year for Westmill Solar. I'm very happy to answer questions.
That's great. Thanks, Martin.
Okay.
Alistair, do you want to feed questions?
Yes, we have 4 questions which have come in for you, Martin.
Great.
So in no particular order, I'll start with Janet Curtis. What has affected the reduction in performance recently?
Well, the main impact on performance is obviously the amount of sunshine that we had throughout the year. But I think what you will expect to see with a solar farm in the performance of the panels is a gradual, very small reduction in performance that you would get year on year. And there's lots of evidence of what that looks like. At the same time, we are always doing things to try and anticipate any tail off in performance by just making things better, by doing planned and reactive maintenance that can identify issues early so that we can fix them, where we can take measures with new technology to try and make sure that the performance at the very least maintains very high, but could actually improve our generation. I think the point of the figures that we see now, as the site is getting older, actually the performance levels are still consistently high. So it is still performing very well. And I think that is in large part to making sure that we're doing a good job from the planned maintenance schedule, but also in the reactive maintenance where problems can be identified and fixed as quickly as possible.
Okay, we have other questions from Cecilia Ollie. Are there any plans to expand solar capacity or install battery storage?
One of the challenges of adding additional solar capacity, apart from the issues with that's it's a working farm where the site is, but there's limitations on that. We can't get our feed-in tariff payments, which is our main income, on any additional capacity. So we're not allowed to increase the capacity of the site in that way. And so it makes it very difficult then to even if it was physically desirable and possible, but it makes it very difficult to get that return on investment that we might need at this stage. I think on battery storage, I think that's very much a work in progress, and I know that there's lots of discussions going on between Westmill Solar, Westmill Wind, and with the landowners about the possibility of doing this, and this huge potential from battery storage to provide flexibility to the local grid, and at the same time to realise additional revenue streams from grid services, from energy services. But it's all about it's a work in progress with battery storage. I think we're seeing massive tail-offs in pricing of lithium ion, which is the main type of battery chemistry that's being used at the moment. So I think watch for the future, and certainly one that we're engaged with even now to see what business models can work that we might be able to deploy at Westmill.
Okay. Another question. Sarah James. Might Westmill Solar be able to curtail output due to current low electricity demand, as some generation is being asked to do so? And if so, would they expect compensation?
Well, this is something that's come up quite recently, a topic that's come up because of the reduced energy consumption across the UK, and which has then given real challenges to the grid as to how they can turn off. It's possible that we could be asked we could be switched off in terms of what we would get in terms of compensation. I'm not clear on exactly how that would work. There is other revenue streams that are being opened up for potential curtailment, but that's not something that we could look to tap into at the moment, based on how they're structured at the moment. So I think this is really quite a new issue that's come for the grid, and it's still working itself out as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not clear on what the risks are, or indeed potential upside could be for us today. At the moment, I don't think it's an actual problem that we will see just yet, but let's see.
Okay. We have a couple of people asking a similar question. So Michael Woolacott, Janet King, Morris Dixon, among others, are asking about the policy for inverter replacement and cleaning, and the reliability of the panels. Okay,
so on the inverter replacement, we basically have a warranty with SMA, which is the manufacturer of the inverters on the site, and that covers the supply of parts and maintenance, and we also have a guarantee of performance with that. So those inverters can continually be repaired and upgraded with components. At the same time, there's also a look at how we might have a longer term view to replace inverters, and that there's different types of inverters which we could consider. And the technology, apart from the technology moving forward, the costs have changed significantly. And so that is something that's very much under review. But in the short term, it's about maintaining and being proactive in the maintenance of the inverters that we've got at the moment, with a longer term view as to what replacement might look like and how they might be phased out over a period. But it's certainly not going to be the case that we reach the end of a 10-year warranty period and all of a sudden they all switch off. It will carry on. In terms of the panels, we do clean the modules periodically. That's part of the planned maintenance program that we have. But importantly, it's not just cleaning them for the sake of cleaning them. It's based on whether we see any impact on performance. And we can clean an area of panels and see what the impact has been over a period, and have a sort of coordinated approach to cleaning them.
Perfect. And one final question for you from Nicola Graves Gregory. I'll just have it as the final question because we're running low on time. How long did it take the solar park to offset the initial energy consumption to produce the panels?
No idea. Good question. I don't know.
No problem. I'm sure
if someone can tell me, I'd love to know.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all the questions for now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. And we, as I said, we will come back and answer the questions, including the difficult ones like the embedded carbon in our panels, as soon as we can. Turning to the 2019 accounts, I'm going to ask Bob to summarise the key figures and ask any questions on the accounts or indeed the proposed reappointment of Critchley's as auditors. So Bob, if I can hand over to you, hopefully seamlessly.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Tom, and good morning, everybody. Sam, can we have the slide, please? So on the finances, only one slide. I've tried to pick out the key figures from the many numbers that there are in the accounts pack. Starting off with the income, well, actually, no, before that, what I want to emphasize is that the solar farm runs constantly, and its running, barring accidents, is very similar from one year to the next. So it's very stable. We know that it generates X amount of electricity a year, give or take a little bit, and the revenue streams that come in from that are pretty constant as well. So what I'm emphasizing in this presentation is that things are broadly very similar this year to last year and previous years. So on the income side, we have income of £2.28 million this year, which compares with 2.25 million roughly last year. And that's really very similar from one year to the next. It's only a variation of a couple of percentage points. Martin told you that the generation was down slightly, but because our income is inflation linked, or the FIT is inflation linked, and the PPA rate that we get for generating our electricity has gone up. So in the year we have achieved a larger sterling or pound income despite generating slightly less electricity. Second key figure for the members anyway is the amount of interest that you're going to get, which will be paid out in a few weeks' time after the AGM. And again, that's very similar. It's 12 pence per share. 488,000 last year, 487,000 this year. And the reason it's gone down by £1,000 is because a number of members of the cooperative withdrew their shares during the year. So that's taken a little chunk off the payout. But everybody who's still invested still gets 12 pence per share. Third thing, which is very important, is the community fund. It's very strong in the cooperative principles, and we are a cooperative. We incorporated as a cooperative rather than any other way because of the principles of benefiting the community, widening education, and support our enterprise. So the community fund, which is pegged at the moment at a ratio to the members' interest, the community fund will be £86,000 during this year, as it was last year. And Nina will tell us more about that in due course. But it's very important to remember, and there are, I think, 140 people listening to me at the moment, that we are a cooperative, and giving back to the community is a very, very important part of our constitution and the reasons that we started off this way in the first place. Okay. I'm going now into the third line there, which is the things that happened this year that didn't happen last year. So during this year, or during 2019, we had the bond issue. Now, that was a one-off enterprise, or at least I believe it is. And there were costs associated with it, which came to about £45,000. Some of that was the fee of the issuer, FX, some of it was legal fees, some of it was marketing fees, but that totaled up to £45,000. And that was a one-off expense that won't happen last year and didn't happen, won't happen next year and didn't happen last year. The second big item here is the accounting adjustments and provision. I apologise, I've headlined that wrong. It's not connected with the bond issue. It's connected with the repayment of £2 million to LPPI, who are our senior lenders. LPPI lent £12 million to the cooperative when we started up, and we've been gradually paying off chunks of it. But during the course of 2019, partly as a result of the bond issue and partly because of cash generated from our normal operations, we were able to pay back £2 million to LPPI as a prepayment. £436,000 looks like a huge amount of money to hit the P&L account, but I've got to emphasise that this is actually good news. Part of it is a provision for legal costs of £48,000. It looks as though that provision is not going to be required. So that £48,000 at the end of this year may well be released back into the P&L account. So it'll come as a credit next year. That's not certain, but that's what we believe at the moment. The rest of it is best described as accelerated interest. So it's amounts that we would have to pay to LPPI sooner or later, but because of the peculiarities of accounting for an inflation-linked bond of umpteen £1 million, in order to make everything work, we had to put it into the P&L account in this year. So the 390 odd thousand pounds, the balance of that figure is actually going to come back to the cooperative as reduced interest charges in future years. Hello, Sam, you've gone out of control. Okay. So there will be reduced interest charges in future years. And that £436,000, one way or another, will come back into the P&L account during the course of the next 15 years or so. So bad news this year, but good news for the next 15 years. So then the next line here is the retained profit or loss. Last year, £244,000. In 2019, it would have been very similar had it not been for the one-off items. So we've got a loss of £209,000 in 2019, which is 100% explained by the one-off items associated with the bond issue and the repayment to LPPI. Moving down to the cash and loans, liquidity situation, you can see that over the course of the year, the cash balance went down by about £800,000, and the loan also went down by about £800,000, and that's basically the reason for that is because we used some of the cash to pay off the loan. That's about it on the finance slide, so I'll move over to questions now, and just taking a look at the screen here to see if there are any finance questions. I'm not sure of any at the moment. Alistair, are you keeping track of questions?
Yes, I am. There are a couple which I think might be good for you to answer if you can. But if you feel another board member is a better fit, then let's go with that. 3 people were interested primarily in future investments. So I have John, who was interested in the idea of whether any further opportunities to invest in 2021 planned.
Okay, thanks for giving me the opportunity to duck out of these. I will very briefly cover it, but I think Tom might want to cover it because it's a question of broader policy. There are no plans at the moment for us to open up to future investment. The projections we have at the moment show the solar farm continuing to generate for the next 15, 16 years and probably into the future after that. During the course of that time, we will repay all the loans, we will repay the £1 million bond, and we will return money to the shareholders. So there are no plans at the moment. However, there are broader questions, and I'm aware that a couple of questions have come up in the Q&A about battery storage and things like that. There are broader questions about the future of the Westmill site, and that is a question of broader policy, and I'll leave Tom to address that in due course. Next question, Alistair.
A similar vein, some people are asking, that's Emily North and Jonathan Durant, who are asking about the availability to buy shares on a secondary market, if that's going to be something that gets reopened.
Right, now, secondary market, I think, is a question that we answered in writing before the AGM. Again, question of broad policy, and Tom may want to add to this or subtract from what I say. We did have a secondary market for the first 6 or 7 years of running the solar farm. The objective of the secondary was to enable members who wanted to withdraw to have a way of withdrawing their shares, and to enable new members to come in and join the cooperative. It didn't work very well, and we didn't succeed through the secondary market in attracting many new members. The other question about the issue with the secondary market is that it's not a common practice in the cooperative sector. The more normal way of withdrawing or issuing shares in the cooperative sector is that the cooperative itself will buy back shares at par, and if anyone wants to join the cooperative, then the shares can be issued at par to that person. So we've withdrawn the secondary market a couple of years ago now, and if any member of the cooperative now wants to cash in their shares, they have to apply to the cooperative, and provided all the criteria met, the cooperative itself will withdraw the shares and reimburse the shareholder. But again, there are questions of policy there, so I'll leave that to Tom if he wants to add to it in due course. Alistair, any further questions?
No, there's a question I think I will hold for Nina about community funding.
Alistair, Bob, I might just add, it's as good a time as any probably to add to that. I think what Bob said is right, both in terms of the secondary market not really working the way we wanted to. And we did do the bond issue last year specifically to bring in new members, and that was probably more successful. I think, and this goes back also to, do we actually raise any more money? I think we are, in our financial model, we anticipate returning capital to members at various points over the lifetime of the project. Provisionally, we've got something lined up potentially for 2021 in that respect. That depends obviously to a large extent on how the solar park performs, how the society performs over the next 12 months. It also depends on the situation with the Financial Conduct Authority, which we mentioned in the report and accounts, because if we get some intervention from them, it may well be that they're looking not just at the interest rates that we're paying to members, but our broader capital structure. And I think one of the reasons we did the bond offer last year was to actually put in place something that we could repeat, or at least slightly adapt and repeat in future years, so that it would be possible to repay some of the founders' capital and offer both existing members and crucially new members an opportunity to join the cooperative at that point. So there's quite a lot of moving parts in terms of both external, internal new members and what we've been doing historically, and that's all there. And I think over the course of the next, on this item, it might not be the next few months, but I think certainly during the course of 2021, things will become clearer on that. And we'll obviously come out to members and explain more and get your input and feedback and agreement to that. We were delighted with the enthusiasm of members, I think it's fair to say, for the bond issue. I mean, that was existing members seem to love that. So yeah, there seems to be a very, very strong desire to try and repeat something for it. Are there any other questions, Alistair, or financially?
There's one more that's just come in, which is what are the criteria that have to be met before a request to withdraw shares is approved? So I'm happy to fend that one off. Basically, it's a question of whether or not we've got sufficient money available in the co-op to reimburse. There's no good reason why we should resist someone withdrawing from the cooperative. So it's just a question of administration and whether there's enough funds available. We don't anticipate a problem if 1 member, 2 member, 3 members want to withdraw. If there's a stampede, it might be an issue, but I don't see that happening. Okay, back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Bob. That's great. There's no other questions. I propose resolution 2, which is to receive the audited accounts for 2019, including an interest payment of 12p per share and community funding of 85,916. Can I ask for a seconder for the motion by using the raise hand icon? We have a seconder, Alistair?
Apologies, they're all flooding in. I'm going to take the first one, which I saw, which was a Francis. I didn't see a surname on the card, unfortunately, so we might have to change that later. But the first one looks, we might have to switch that to...
Should we take someone with a surname?
Yeah, so Royston Morgan will take as a seconder for that one. Thank you, Royston.
Thank you. And can I ask now the poll on the screen?
Should now have been launched.
Thank you. And if I can ask you to vote on motion 2. I'm going to close the vote in 3, 2, 1, close.
Results being shared now.
Results of that. Thank you very much. That's a great result. And I'm pleased to say, as well as the votes cast that you can see on the screen in front of you, we had a total of 430 votes cast in favour in advance and by proxy, 10 against, and 33 abstained. So I declare that motion passed too. Resolution 3 is the reappointment of Critchley as auditors to the Society. I think it's worth saying, and I think we had a question on this last year at least, is it something that we're looking in terms of going out to tender and making sure that Critchleys are doing as good a job as anybody else can. We have looked at that. Critchley's actually, we had a different audit partner this year, so there was a fresh pair of eyes looking over our audit, which I think is a helpful process. I think FX got a really good audit pack over to them. They seem very pleased with it. And I'm also very conscious that with Bob stepping down and Andy hopefully coming in and taking over, that actually we didn't necessarily want this year to sort of change auditors as well. That was likely to be slightly disruptive. So based on Critchley's performance up till now, we think they're very, very worthwhile, very good people to have on our side. And we're therefore proposing to reappoint them for this year, although we may well review the situation ahead of next year. So, Alistair, any questions on that? Or
I don't have. Oh, sorry, I do have one from Penny Shepherd. How long have they been our auditors?
I think 6 years. That's off the top of my head. Well, I'll check that, but it's
Yep,
I think it was 5 last year, and it's now 6. So, as I say, we've had changes of personnel within Critchley's, which I think actually is probably a good thing. But as we have, we've had a very strong relationship with them for a long time.
Thank you. That's all of them.
Brilliant. So in that case, I propose that Critchleys be appointed as auditors of the Society and that the directors be authorised to agree their remuneration for the current financial year. Can I ask someone to second the motion?
That would be Martin Chaston.
Thank you, Martin. And with a poll on the screen, can I ask everybody who to vote? It all seems to be coming in pretty well. I'm going to close in 3, 2, 1. Voting closing.
Voting closed.
And
Sharing
we've got
results
the
now.
results for that. That's great. Thank you, Sam. So as well as the votes you can see on screen, or at least the proportions you can see on screen, we had a total of 420 votes cast in favour, in advance and by proxy, 4 against and 49 abstentions. So I declare that resolution passed. Thank you. So that's great. Thank you, everybody. The next 3 resolutions deal with the appointment of directors. And as you probably know, every year a third of the board have required by rotation. And this year, Bob Pedley has decided not to stand for re-election. I'd really just like to take an opportunity now to thank Bob and embarrass him slightly, personally, on behalf of the board, on behalf of all the members generally, for everything that he's done since he joined the board in 2013. I have to say he's displayed a forensic attention to detail in all matters financial since then, which I think has been to all members' immense benefit. And he's also played a key role in maintaining our relationship with LPPI, and particularly in the last 12 months in negotiating the changes to the LPPI loan agreement, and also in structuring and implementing the bond offer. So although we can't physically present anything to him today, we have arranged on your behalf a little something to be delivered to him next week. So look out for the UPS delivery man. And thank you, Bob, very much for everything you've done. I'm also delighted to say that although he's stepping down from the board, we have been able to persuade him to stay involved, both in leading the members working group on potential investments, which I'll come to a little later, and also helping Nina and her community funding members group. So as I say, although he won't see him on the board, we're delighted that we will be seeing him on an ongoing basis. So Bob, thank you for everything. And thanks. Nina is the other director retiring this year. I'm pleased to say she is standing for re-election. She's taken the lead on all things community funding, which has developed enormously in the past 18 months or so. We've also decided, and I think we've got time to be able to do this, that each of the new directors should give a very brief introduction of themselves and why they want to join the board, just so that you've got a chance to actually, if not see them in the flesh, at least see them face to face. So over to you, Nina, first.
Hello. So yeah, I joined the board in 2016. I'm a chartered accountant, so that means sometimes I'm a helpful pair of eyes looking at things like the bond issue document or the annual report. As Tom said, I've taken the lead on the community funding. So we had quite a lot of discussions at last year's AGM. You may remember me if you were there for that. And a lot of work's gone on since. So you'll be hearing a little more later in the programme about that. But trying to introduce new opportunities for members to let us know what you want us to be spending the community funding on. So yeah, just hang on for a second, you'll hear more. Also, a couple of years ago and today I've been helping to organise the AGM. So I'm really disappointed that we're not actually having our nice big day out at the Steam Museum. We had a lot of interesting people lined up for you to find out about community funding and other things we're working with. So just to let you know, we will do something when we can. We don't know what or when yet, but yeah, we'll do something in person. So please, yeah, re-elect me so that I can carry on working on all that stuff. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Nina. We probably don't have time to ask specific questions. So I'm actually going to propose, unless there's something urgent coming through that people want to raise, I'm going to move on and propose resolution 4, that Nina Alfie be reappointed as a director. And can I ask someone to second the resolution?
We've already had a second from Graham Ollie.
Yep.
Thank you, Graham. And the poll should appear on the screen shortly. And if I could ask you to vote.
Poll launched.
Thank you. I think that's probably all coming in by the look of it. So voting closing in 3, 2, 1, closed. Scores on the doors. That's great. Thank you, everybody who's voted on that. And as well as the unanimous votes cast on the poll function, well done, Nina. We had a total of 410 votes cast in favour in advance, and by proxy 2 against and 61 abstentions. So I declare the resolution passed and Nina reappointed as a director. Now, under our rules, we can actually have up to 7 directors, and you'll be aware that we've been down to 6 for the past year. So with Bob not standing for re-election, this has left 2 board seats available. One of the motivations for the bond issue was to sort of bring new members in and, if you like, reinvigorate some of the existing membership. And I'm delighted that both Angela and Andy, who I think have been with us as members since 2012, it's triggered their thing to stand for these places, and they are, I think, both immensely capable people. But I will allow them to introduce themselves, and over to you first, Angela.
Good morning. I'm Angela Bryant, and I live in Oxfordshire, about 30 miles from Westmill. And as Tom says, I've been a member since 2012. I started my career at British Airways as an analyst, and then moved to Vodafone, where I worked in various strategy roles before becoming a global head of marketing. Before working for myself, I ran a sustainability consultancy and was involved in a number of interesting high-profile roles, including running the community engagement for the London 2012 Olympic Legacy team. I then became exec director of a not-for-profit focused on carbon cutting, where we ran a number of projects, including one to put solar panels on schools across the country. I've now had an online business that I run, and in my spare time I sing with a choir and have done for over 20 years, and have recently become a year-round outdoor wild swimmer. If appointed, I would really like to use my knowledge of traditional and online marketing strategy, community engagement and behaviour change to support Westmill's board. And I think that's it. Quick summary. Thank you.
So a very impressively and quick summary, so thank you for that. As I say, unless anybody's got any specific questions, I'm going to propose that we just move straight to the resolution, which is that Angela Bryant be appointed as a director of the Society. And Sam, if you could get the poll.
Yep, it's just to do so. It's been seconded by Nicola Graves Gregory, that poll. So I'll just get the poll up for you now. And
thank you. By who? Sorry, you cut out there, Sam.
By Nicola Graves Gregory.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicola. So if everybody could now vote. I'm going to close the vote in 3, 2, 1, closed.
So there seems to have been a slight confusion in the polling on this one. It's not too bad, but please read the first number as there. It seems to have doubled for some reason, the results. Or there seems to be a number. Oh no, that's the collected numbers. Sorry, please just read the numbers.
That's okay. 50. It looks right to me.
Yep, 68.
That's great. So as well as the votes that you should be able to see on your screen, we had a total of 401 votes cast in favour of the resolution in advance or by proxy, 2 against and 70 abstentions. So I declare the resolution passed and Angela Bryant elected to the board. Congratulations, Angela. So our final resolution this morning is for the appointment of Andy Crawford. And Andy, if you'd like to sort of just give a quick summary introduction, that would be appreciated.
Thanks, Tom, and good morning, everybody. So my name is Andy Crawford. I've lived in Wantage for about 25 years now. My career background is in finance, specifically in investment banking in the city, although I've also spent 7 or 8 years working for a large mental health charity in Oxford, where I was a director. My background in renewables is, I suppose, as a personal investment, I have a 4 kilowatt solar panel system on my roof and have had for 10 years, and it's been really useful. I'm currently the district councillor for Wantage Charlton Ward. I've been a councillor mostly on, slightly off since 1999, and I'm the cabinet member for finance. I guess my interest, as well as keeping making sure the finances continue to work smoothly as they have under Bob, is really to explore as much as possible new initiatives that Westmill can take part in expanding our footprint, if you like, in the field. I should also maybe say that I was also a founder investor in Westmill wind farm many years ago. I certainly won't be doing any wild swimming though. That's it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Andy. So I propose that Andrew Crawford be appointed as a director of the society. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yep, we've
Chris.
got a Pete Bishop.
That's
Thank you,
great.
Pete.
Thank you, Pete. And if we could get the poll up. Yeah, give me 1 second. Just coming up now. That's great. Thank you, Sam. I'm going to close the vote in 3, 2, 1. Closed. And get the results of the poll. Excellent. Thank you. So as well as the votes, you can see on the screen, we had a total of 390 cast in favour in advance or by proxy, 8 against and 75 abstained. So I declare resolution 6 passed and Andrew Crawford elected to the board. So congratulations, Andy. Congratulations, Angela. Congratulations, Nina. And for Angela and Andy, welcome to the board. And I think we all look forward to working with you over the year ahead. And thank you, everyone, for that. That concludes the formal business of this meeting. And as I think you've heard, yeah, your co-op had a very, very good year financially in 2019, and we've had a great start to 2020. There's been a couple of comments I've particularly caught up on Vivian Woodall's question. It's crucial to recognise, and indeed what Bob said, it's crucial to recognise that what we do is not just about money. Financial success is important because it shows to the world that what we set out to achieve back in 2012 can be done. And back in 2012, nobody had done this on this scale before with a community-owned solar park. And hopefully we could inspire others to do the same. And indeed, yeah, as Andy said, maybe use some of our resources to help other people do the same. And it's ultimately not about how much money we make, but we're defined more by what we do with this money. So the whole point of having a section now is to deal with these other things that actually make us what we are. So Mark is going to explain the cooperative values and principles that underpin the society. Nina's going to go through all the wonderful things that Westmill Solar's been doing with our community funding. And Mari's then going to describe how your board is starting to get our heads around Westmill Solar's longer term future. I think somebody may have alluded to this in one of the questions earlier, because we're keen to ensure that we don't just get to 2036. The feed-in tariff expires. We find we can't continue to operate, even though the panels could operate for a number of years longer. But to achieve all this, we need to start planning now. And we have started that work over the last 12 months, and we're going to go again. So if I can hand over now to Mark Luntley to describe and go into cooperative principles. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you. Could we have the next slide, please? Okay, I just wanted to talk briefly about this, and I was looking back, and this photo illustrates one of the cooperative principles. It's about us being a democratic institution. And we are one of 43 member cooperatives that are renewable energy co-ops, with the largest one in the UK. And I think one of the things that the board does is it's very aware that we are actually, you know, a demonstrator of community and cooperative values. Our surpluses that we generate go in a number of places. They don't all go to our members. As Nina will talk about in a few minutes, we have agreed and we've taken some of our surpluses to support work in the community. And we're looking, and it's another cooperative value, at how we can be innovative and actually develop work in our community. And there's a couple of other things that we've done, I think, that I just point to. The bond that we did in the last year, when we talked with FX and others, yes, it was about raising finance, but it was also, as Tom has said, about bringing in new members. That was absolutely important. New local members, and as far as we could, younger members. And that's one of the points that sits behind the cooperative principles. And by reducing the amount of money we have borrowed from LPPI, we also have greater flexibility to use our funds to support other co-ops, because that was one of the other things that we negotiated. So we have been working to meet not just one, but all of the 7 international cooperative principles, because that is what we see as important. So it's to do with how we work and with whom we work. So for example, we sell our electricity to the joint venture of Cooperative Energy and Octopus, which is partly run by the Mid-Counties Cooperative, one of the biggest retail cooperatives. And we have been working with them and looking at how we can work better with them. And as a really small example, Mid-Counties did an appeal for a food scheme as a result of COVID, and we were really happy to support that. And it was a modest amount, but it was about supporting our other cooperatives. It's important that we do this. We are registered by the Financial Conduct Authority. We need to demonstrate that we meet those requirements of being a co-op going forward. And we want to think about the future. How will we meet these principles in the future? What's the level of involvement that we can have with our members? This has been a fantastic day. Both co-ops have got far more members engaging, ironically, online than we have had coming to events. And so that's something there. And we also have a relationship. Many of the people buy the electricity from Co-op Octopus, and we sell to Co-op Octopus. So there's something there that we need to think about, whether we can make more of that as well. So the cooperative principles, in summary, are at the heart of what we do, and we want to make that stronger going forward. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Mark. I'm not actually proposing to deal with questions after each of these sections. Hopefully, if we've got time, we'll have time to pick up some of the ones that have come through after that. But as I say, as Mark's emphasised, we are a cooperative. We are not if you like, a normal company. And the board, I think, this year more than most, has actually been very conscious of that and trying to take things forward in a way that's consistent with those cooperative principles. And as I said before, there will be more news as we develop these ideas over the summer. Next up is Nina on the community funding. So if I can hand over to Nina.
Thank you. Slide please, Sam. So our lovely Westmill Solar members are very generous, and we agreed a few years ago a formula so that for every £85 that's declared as interest on members' shares, we would also put aside £15 to put towards funding community benefit. So that's the 86,000 figure that Bob mentioned for 2019. And of that figure, as we've done for a long time, 1% of our turnover, which is 23,000 last year, is paid over to Reset. So this is what we've agreed at present. It's not set in stone. We can be discussing and changing this in the future as part of our strategy. In case you don't know about Reset, if you're a new member, they are a local charity funded by us and the wind farm. They organise tours and visits on the site. And during lockdown, they've made a virtual tour, and there's a link at the end of your slide pack. They also engage with various schools and other local groups and generally promote renewables. Slide, please, Sam. So how do we decide how to spend the rest? Well, follows beautifully from Mark that we follow the cooperative principles to guide us. So number 7, it's all about community and sustainability. That's the easy one. But these others are also relevant. So we like to help out with education and training, sharing information, innovation. We also like to cooperate with other social enterprises. And particularly where, if we can pool our effort and resources, we can get a bigger impact overall. There's been a few examples over the years where that's really been clear. Slide, please. Our approach is a concentric one to what do we mean by community. So we focus very much on the local and our region, which is mostly Oxfordshire and Wiltshire, little bits of other nearby counties. We do a bit at national level and we make one international donation. So sort of more in the centre and spreading out. I'm not going to spell out exactly what we spent. On page 7 of your annual report, it tells you everything that we've spent since the last AGM. It's just one I want to flag up because just after that report was finished, we made a donation to Mid Counties Co-op for their COVID-19 food bank fund. We wanted to make a start on trying to do something to help our communities that have been affected. And we're hoping that you'll give us some more suggestions on that, particularly when we come to talk about the grants scheme. Slide, please, Sam. So what's new since the last AGM? Of 3 things, really. Hopefully you noticed in April newsletter, we launched an expanded scheme for free energy audits for community buildings. So this is done by EIE, who are non-profit experts run out of Oxford Brookes University, and it's administered by Low Carbon Hub. And they produce really practical, sensible advice, prioritised, costed on how to reduce energy use and carbon footprint, and they're very highly regarded. So we're funding some more of those, and now you can nominate a community building or get them to fill in the form. So it's anywhere in Oxfordshire or anywhere within 25 miles of the Westmill site. That's a bigger area than we used to be able to do. Second thing that's new since last year, we're about to launch, so watch this space, the community grants scheme, which we discussed at last year's AGM. Again, we want you to tell us, the board, organisations that you hope to benefit from this. Some members have already volunteered to be on a panel with me to help assess applications when they come in. We're going to do a pilot scheme. So up to £5,000 for a grant, and we put £30,000 into the pot, and it may be smaller amounts, a few £100 or up to 5,000. We want to fund the sorts of things we've been funding already, but we're now going to be more explicit about ticking those boxes about community and cooperation and sustainability, and think about the local focus. And as I've mentioned, maybe COVID-19 is going to crop up this year as well as being a big thing. So please watch out for that. There will be links, forms and everything on the website. Finally, we had a long talk last year's AGM about sustainability of new housing. And so we had some aims that we wanted to fill, and we found One Planet Oxfordshire have a zero carbon housing project, which is very close to what we wanted to do. They want to put out there an exemplar just to show what can be done, that it could be zero carbon, maybe even climate positive. It can be involving the community, viable, no excuse why this shouldn't go mainstream, done at scale. So we've got this very exciting project. It's a loose coalition of a lot of different parties. Tom and I were invited along to speak at their launch. They are very excited about Westmill Solar. We're a bit of a beacon here. What they'd like to do is have a community-owned solar farm alongside the development, which is great. They're looking at a number of sites, all pretty close to Westmill and in various stages of planning. So we're going to keep an eye on that and get involved. We've started conversations about how our community funding might help support that. And one example is working with local colleges and the developers to support some apprentices in these new sustainable building methods, and hopefully then leading on to local green jobs as well. So we do like to get a sort of feedback from the room. I think if you like what you see in terms of those ideas, perhaps while I just wrap up my final slide, if you could raise your hand on Zoom and someone can tell me whether that looks like...
well, they're flooding in, Nina, so it looks like you're doing very well. And it looks like it's all very positive.
Get the next slide then, please, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great, thank you. Obviously, we'd like a lot of feedback and conversation with our members. Do keep coming. Get involved, spread the word about these schemes. You can nominate a community building, you can recommend or apply for a grant. The grant application form will have a line, did a Westmill Solar member recommend this? So we can get your name on there, and that gives us a feel for the ones that come from members' suggestions. Everything will be on the website. If you want to know more or to suggest things, it's the usual email address. And if you put community funding in the subject line, then it will reach me. So thanks very much.
That's great. Thank you, Nina. And thank you, everybody, for your enthusiastic response on the raising hands. That's much appreciated and good to know. So final slot of the AGM is for Mari. I mean, this isn't a section that we've had specifically before, but as I mentioned, it is something we're looking at, and it's something that Mari is particularly well qualified to help us with. So Mari, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom. So hello to everybody. I've been a director for a year now, and yeah, really pleased to be involved with Westmill. And I just want to do a quick introduction to the thinking that we've been doing about the longer term strategy. I mean, I think the mandate for this has been touched on throughout the meeting and some of the questions that we've had come in. The Solar Park has obviously been there for 10 years and was originally financed on the basis of operating to 2036. But we do believe we should be looking beyond that, as you said, and certainly our planning permission allows for that. So we are starting to think about what that conversation needs to be and how we need to work towards a longer term strategy. Can you pop onto the next slide, please? We're a co-op, so obviously you'd expect us to take a cooperative and collaborative approach, and that means particularly working with the other organisations with an interest in the site. So working with the Wind Co-op, with WeSet, and Adam and his sister Jane as our landlord. And I guess in the first instance, it's just getting our heads around what the opportunities are, what the priorities are, and how are we going to work together. And so we've got a working group that has been set up to provide the forum for that kind of conversation. Next slide, please. At this point, I just want to take a slight sidestep and mention Project Leo, and I know we've had questions about Leo, because this, I think, kind of also adds to the particular context you're thinking about the longer term strategy for us, and then also what's going on with the local energy system in general. So Project Leo, it's Local Energy Oxfordshire, and it's led by Scottish and Southern Electricity. So although it says Oxfordshire, actually the geographical scope is slightly different from that because it focuses on the regional area that Scottish and Southern are running the local part of the electricity network. And I think it's fair to say that as a partnership, it's led by Scottish and Southern for very, very good reasons, but it's very much the brainchild of the Low Carbon Hub and the University of some of the people at the University of Oxford, those organisations are both partners, along with Oxford City Council, Oxfordshire County Council, and some smaller innovation technology companies. And its main aim is about developing a local market to allow for flexibility with generation, demand and storage. So basically bringing the kinds of trading systems that happen at a national level with National Grid into a regional level. And that's interesting because it's about the future of the local energy system. And so good for us to be involved and see what the opportunities are. But in particular, we've been invited to start conversations with them as part of that project to make sure that the way that that is implemented for the kind of energy system we want. So community involvement, community ownership, returns to the community and benefits to the community beyond just financing somebody's pension very far away from Oxfordshire and the rest of the wider area. So that's a brief introduction to LEO, and if we can pop back onto the next slide. So what does that mean then in terms of the conversations about the longer term strategy? Well, as I said, we set up a working group and we've got some initial priorities to look at, and they're a mix of things that need some action to start right now. In particular, and kind of mandated from the Wind Co-op is looking at their planning permission and also the lease arrangements with the landlord. But also the kind of collective goals that we have and want to be integral to the future of the site and the future of any other projects on the site. So, for example, anything that that could arise as a result of engaging with Project LEO. So that includes exploring ways for members to purchase your Westmill energy, as Mark has touched on, and also increasing our local engagement and our member engagement. We expect to start opening those discussions up to engage with members in the next year. But I think it's fair to say that this is the starting point. So it's as much about identifying some of the issues and the priorities that we want to talk about, as we just said. That's not the full list, and we've got a kind of a long time horizon here. And in particular, if you think about the solar park and 2036, what we eventually do will be a result of where these conversations develop to make us ready for that. But, obviously how the situation and the opportunities evolve over time. So it's a bit of a watch this space, but we will be in touch soon on this, and hopefully lots and lots of opportunity for you to engage with us on it. Thank you.
Mari, that's great. Thank you. I'm very conscious of time. There's a couple of questions that are still outstanding. Richard, Pete, you're reading our mind in terms of Ripple Energy and stuff like that. And also, it's interesting that there's a question. I don't think we've ever been asked, should we reduce our interest payments to members? But that is something we will bear in mind, or at least look at ways in which the benefits to members are given in ways other than hard cash. As I said, any questions we haven't answered, we will get them answered afterwards. I'd like, just before we say, I would like to say thank you, firstly to all my board colleagues who, as you'll have appreciated from their presentations, put in far more time for all our benefit than I think we could reasonably expect, and whose dedication, expertise and enthusiasm is hugely appreciated, particularly from me. Secondly, to Rena, British Solar Renewables, Co-op Energy, Octopus, and all the other people who you may not see, but behind the scenes, everything working. Thanks to FX, particularly in this respect, particularly to Sam and Alistair, who with Nina and the Energy for All team have succeeded, I think you'll agree, in making this AGM run so smoothly, and did a great job to move it online at relatively little notice. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to those members who may not be on the board, but actually play an increasingly important role in supporting the things we do with the members group. So a special shout out to Matt Desborough for his help with the Visitor Centre project with WeSet, Lars Calvert, Julia Spragg, Saskia Huggins for your work on the community funding grants panel, Laura Denby, who helped enormously with the marketing on the bond offer, and Linda Tillotson and Steve Cox for kicking things off on the building energy audit nominations. I'm sure there are many others who I failed to mention, for which I can only apologise. But thank you all. We're very much a members co-op. So if anyone else among you is inspired by them to get more involved, there are plenty of opportunities to do so. As you'll have gathered, there's a whole load of stuff going on that we want you to get involved with. And please get in touch with us at info@westmillsolar.coop. Finally, for anybody missing the site, I think the last presentation slide, if you've got spare 10 minutes, recommend you take a look at the virtual tour that WeSet, Emma Arnold and her colleagues at WeSet have put together, which is a fantastic advert for Westmill. I hope you've enjoyed this morning. We'll be sending out a questionnaire to get your feedback on things. The chat has been buzzing. There's been some really good stuff in that. So thank you for your interaction, and have a great weekend. And indeed, see many of you again in 15 minutes time for the Westmill Wind AGM. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for all your input. And we look forward to seeing you soon.